Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Cabinet today. Just to start with receiving any declaration of interest from members on any item of the agenda. If you could indicate, I don't see any, so there are none. And second item, to receive apologies for absence. I know we've moved around the room a bit, but we are all here. Item number 3 is to agree by general affirmation the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of November 2023. All those in favour just say agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Then item 4, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none, which then moves us to the substantive item on the agenda, which is agenda item 5, the corporate plan and budget. I'd like to welcome Councillors Kenny, Councillor Reeves, Councillor Brown and Councillor Bates to this meeting, and Councillor Kenny and Councillor Eves as your leaders of your groups. If you have any comments on the corporate plan and budget, can I go to Councillor Eves first?
Thank you very much, Chair. We did discuss parking charges during scrutiny quite a lot, as you remember, and we like everything obviously to be evidence-based. So my question is, has there been an annual parking report issued for 22-23? Because the last one we could find is the 2021-22 parking report by Ruth Demiere. So I wonder whether that has been issued or seen by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Kenny? No, thank you. I'll go to Louise Duffield to introduce the item, but also if Simon Hughes wants to respond on the parking matter, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we do have an annual review and we can make that available.
Thank you, Chairman. So in introducing the budget, just remind everyone that the budget was, as Councillor Eves has mentioned, received at scrutiny on the 24th of January, of which Cabinet were in attendance, and there was significant discussion and a debate, and I know that Cabinet have taken that into consideration prior to today. As I noted at scrutiny, on the day of scrutiny itself, we received a slight betterment in terms of the proposed financial settlement. We modelled this at roughly £171,000. We are still waiting for the final figures. However, that does still mean that we will need, from various sources of windfall income, 1.6 million to balance this budget, even with the proposed increases in fees and charges and taxes. So we must be aware of the significant financial challenges that we're facing. And of course, from next year onwards, there's no guarantee that any of the settlements that we've received or have been proposed this year will recur. They're all one-year settlements, and so that cliff edge does loom quite large for us. That said, I think in proposing this budget, there are significant commitments to our residents that are in there, not least continuing the food waste trial and preparing to deliver the new burdens in terms of waste going forward. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Louise. If I could introduce the debate, and I'll be proposing that we recommend the draft corporate plan to Council for consideration and approval. Just really to set at high level, as we all know, we get our income from council tax, fees and charges, rent, and then the Treasury management income. And we know from previous medium-term financial plans and indeed this one that however we cut it, we have a structural gap between income and expenditure. And we're proposing a balanced budget for 24-25, and we can do that because we are utilising approximately £1.8 million from the Treasury management income and general reserves. And we know that we're currently in a favourable position when it comes to Treasury management income to help us to get to that balanced position. But the fact remains that that structural gap is still there. And we're a service-based organisation, so employ 300 and odd staff directly, and then if you look at the services that are managed by some of our partners indirectly, about 1,000 staff. And, you know, you've really only got two ways of closing a structural gap. One is, you know, the number of people we employ, and the reality is if you shrink your direct or your indirect staff levels, what you're effectively saying is that you're cutting services. You're going to deliver less to your communities. And, you know, I'm you know, particularly proud that we've taken a position as a cabinet that we do, not only are we not going to cut services, and I would invite people to look around at some of our near neighbours and seeing the way that they are having to balance the books. We are not a cabinet that intends to cut services. Indeed, we are a cabinet that is proposing an improvement and enhancement of services over the coming years. So I think that's worth putting down as a stake in the ground. Staff to us as a cabinet are really important, and we support them. You know, not just in the tasks that they do, but by ensuring that we pay, you know, what is the national negotiated rate for the services they provide, and indeed going further by becoming a real living wage employer for our direct staff. And that's a positive, you know, and that's something that we should be proud of. We know that we cannot, you know, continually dip into general reserves to get to a balanced budget. If we, you know, there's a limited number of years that you can do that. And if that was a strategy that, you know, people think that we could adopt, I have to say that that is just a slow walk to bankruptcy. And it would be absolutely foolish of this cabinet, or indeed of any cabinet or any councillor, I would suggest, to propose that as a solution to the issues that we face over the medium-term financial plan. As Louise mentioned, we have also, you know, to face the fact that at some point central government is going to review business rates, the fair funding review. Some people think that it's local authorities that set the level of business rates and rateable valuations for commercial properties. We don't, they're set nationally, we get a share of it, and we get a slightly enhanced share because we're part of a business rates pool. But we know that this government, you know, has, you know, is proposing at some point to review that. And, you know, I would invite members to look at, you know, table 4 in the medium-term financial plan, and we're facing potentially a £3.5 million hit to our income, you know, and that, as has been described as a cliff edge, is a cliff edge, right? We have a duty, as all local authorities have, a duty to present a balanced budget and not to put ourselves or our residents in a position where we cannot meet our obligations as and when they fall due. I don't expect anybody likes increasing tax or increasing fees and charges. It's always, you know, a pill that we would far rather not swallow. But if you want to defend your staff, if you want to maintain services, if you want to enhance services, then you've got to cover that cost from somewhere. And if you want to ensure that you are a prudently run local authority that has, you know, good levels of reserves, that can see into the future with confidence in knowing that we can maintain our level of services and we're not going to put our finances at risk, and this cabinet will not put the finances of Mid Sussex District Council at risk, then the only way that we can get to that balanced position is by looking closely, hardly and with, in a level-headed way at the way that we raise income. And that does mean that we have to make some difficult choices. And I think it's a sign, we haven't been in office as a cabinet for a year yet. I think it's a sign of our growing maturity that we are prepared to take tough decisions because the future of our finances depends upon us taking that mature approach to budgeting. I'll now hand it over to other members of Cabinet to make their contributions. Councillor Anne-Marie Cook.
Hello, thank you, Robert. I'll just start to thank Louise, Rachel and the finance team and all the other department heads for all the work line by line to bring this budget together. Thank you. And thanks also to the cross-party working group and scrutiny committee for their contribution and work to come to a position on which they were able to be agreed. As Robert said, and to reiterate again what he said, we all know that this budget is set in the context of difficult times and uncertainty. Inflation is still running higher than we can or would wish to increase council tax. Government funding and business rate reform go forward with uncertainty. We also see in the news nearby councils in serious difficulties. The Institute of Chartered Accountants published last month a report stating that 20% of councils risk financial failure this year and over 40% in the next 5 years. We are not in that position, but we can't afford to be and won't be complacent. We're pleased to present this balanced budget, albeit with the use of Treasury management windfall income and the use of reserves, but we have plans that hopefully these will be reinstated at some point soon and leave the council in a stable condition. And yeah, I'm happy to propose that we approve this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you. I'm just going to pick up on two areas of the budget that relate to my portfolio. The first one being the collection of food waste, which will be rolled out to every single house in the district by March 2026. And that will be for us, firstly, a capital cost, because we will have new burdens in the sense of paying for new bins and new waste collection vehicles. And then, of course, an ongoing cost in terms of a revenue line to support that. And I think it's important, though, to recognise that we currently have a trial with 3,000 houses that has helped shape our understanding of the importance of the food waste activity and has helped certainly inform West Sussex, but we won't be finishing that trial in March, and the budget intends for that trial to continue and to be expanded slightly to a further couple of thousand houses as we prepare and we ramp up. So that's towards that March 2026 implementation. So firstly, there is a cost there, but the government will give us a capital grant to help with the new burdens of the rollout when the rollout eventually does come. But the indications are that, like many district councils, that grant isn't going to cover the basic costs of bins and vehicles, let alone the fact that our depot in Haywards Heath isn't large enough to accommodate the additional service space that we will require. So for Mid Sussex, there's additional drain. So in terms of the costs that we bring, it's really important. Now, of course, as Councillor Eggleston has identified and highlighted, we run this budget at a deficit of and have to draw on that important capital that is needed for acquiring land for depots and so on. So we have to do what we can to bring money back. And that brings me on really to the second area that I just wanted to highlight within my portfolio, and that being the one of car parking. Car park prices have increased only twice since 2012, They haven't kept pace with inflation. And car parks are expensive things to run. We want to make improvements to our car parks. We want to introduce new technology. We want to free up capacity in East Grinstead to create a second deck on one car park there. But all of this requires money and investment. And so our plan is simply to implement the parking strategy that was agreed fully by the council in the last administration and has been delayed because of COVID. So our plan is to implement that fully over the next 2 budget years. And yeah, our car parking prices will still remain very competitive compared to other towns and districts around us, and for every spend there has to be a relative income, and this is, I think, the trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. A couple of points that I wanted to highlight from my portfolio. One, as you've mentioned, I'm really pleased to see that we're going to become a real living wage employer for directly employed staff from April 2024. I think that's part of a broader commitment to our brilliant officer team to make sure that we are an employer of choice, that we offer apprenticeships and graduate training opportunities. We know it's a really competitive job market out there, and we're really, keen and serious about being somewhere where people want to come to work and want to carry on working. So I'm very pleased that this is being brought forward in this budget. And secondly, in terms of my responsibility for communications, that doesn't just involve how we communicate with the world outside the council. It's also about how we speak within our own 4 walls with officers, but also amongst members. And I was really heartened, actually, by the cross-party work that's brought this budget to this point today. The working group that met, I think, 3 times in the autumn. That was a lot of time and effort, both for our officer staff, but also for the members involved. And that was a cross-party working group that came to a consensus position that brought the budget together and sent it to scrutiny. And also my thanks to the Scrutiny Committee and to the Chairman of the Committee, Councillor Hatton, for all your work on that. So thank you very much. And I hope that those of you here in the back row today can sense that how we've conducted this budget and got it to this point has been done in a consensual way and in a way that where we are listening and you are kind of with us on the journey. I hope that feels, positive for you as it feels for us. So thanks very much. And that was everything I had to say.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Gibson, you indicate, Councillor Gibson.
Back. Chairman, I've discovered you appear on the feed if you've got your microphone on. So, let me just add I want to echo some comments, but I also want to add a few comments. I've been involved in the budgets of 5 councils over the past few months. I think all of them have been particularly difficult at this time. This council is constrained by the percentage increase which it's permitted to add to council tax, and at 2.99%, it is the most constrained of all the councils that I'm dealing with. And I think I'd like to start by congratulating the officers for working within that framework. I know that there is a draw on reserves, but it's less than seemed likely at one stage during the process. And I also want to commend you, Leader, and Councillor Cook for the way in which you've developed consensus through the working group in order to take the political issues out of this particular approach, which I think is absolutely essential for the position that we find ourselves in terms of the financial side. There are challenges in the medium term, you've referred to that, and also I note that we have to address the gap that's facing us there, which is up to £5 million, at the same time as building reserves. And there is a catch-22 in that latter point, in that inflation is raising the number that our reserves have to be held at in order to meet the government's requirement. I'd highlight para 39 in the report, in the plan itself. Those figures, we need a cumulative figure at the bottom to really frighten everybody. That cumulative figure is over £12 million. That's the size of the gap that we have to face up to if the business rate changes are brought in. I'm pleased to see that both housing and our drive to a more sustainable economy have received key support. Our commitment to the purchase of 12 properties to add to our stock of temporary accommodation is confirmed, which is excellent. But I would also note that there is work to be done to ensure that we are making the best use of the housing stock which is available, social housing and affordable housing across the district. And indeed, this morning I had an exchange about a property which I know has been empty for 2 years, and that we have to do something about that unacceptable position. Councillor Hobbs has noted the preparation for the new statutory requirement to collect food waste. The government money is welcome, but it's capital and the challenge is in revenue. And I want to say here that I think that it's really appalling that there is an imbalance between the statutory requirements that the government sets of this council and indeed the council above it, and the funding which is required to support those statutory requirements. We will have to look very carefully at the things that we provide which are non-statutory in order to find the money in order to meet that new statutory requirement, unless the government respond. And of course, the problem is much more severe at county level. I should finish with a comment on parking, particularly regarding East Grinstead. I have to say, from my own personal survey of asking the residents there as they go through the parking machine, yes, they expect an increase. The proposed increase, I think, which is to £1.30 in the car park that I was stood in, is not an issue. I think the wider issues are probably the, if you like, the lack of technology and the lack of investment which we've seen in those car parks. And I'm echoing Councillor Hobbs there, I think. Simply that I was over in Horsham recently, CCTV on entry, stay as long as you like and pay at the time that you go. And I think that type of facility, type of freedom will be much enjoyed by our residents. So thank you very much. I am perfectly content to support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Thank you for your contributions. If we go to the recommendations, which I'll read out in this instance. So, Cabinet is recommended to approve and propose to Council the draft corporate plan and budget set out at Appendix A, and specifically to endorse and recommend A, the financial outlook facing the Council over the medium term, B, the proposed increase in council tax and fees and charges, C, the strategy to use the general reserve to balance the 24-25 budget, and D, the commitment to top up the general reserve where possible over the medium term. If we could go to our voting buttons. Oh, there we go.
Do a show.
And that is carried. Thank you very much. We now go to agenda item number 6, which is strategic risks. Don't know if Councillor Kenny or Councillor Eaves, if you have any comments you wish to make. No, in which case I'll go to Louise Duffield to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. So the strategic risks paper has actually been to Audit Committee and was recommended by them on the 28th of November. This sets out the high-level strategic risks that we feel are facing the council, some of which are short-term and some of which are will be forever there, such as cybersecurity. So I don't have a huge amount to say, as I think the report speaks for itself, but I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you. This is going to be proposed by Councillor Anne-Marie Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks again to the finance team for putting this together, another long, complex but interesting document. The details are all in the pack to go with this meeting, but you'll see that the three big risks that are being assessed here are inflation and cost of living, the district plan, whether it can be successfully filed with government requirements, and cybersecurity. There's risks identified and mitigating factors noted, and it makes a good, sensible report, so I'm happy to recommend it.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. I believe, Councillor Gibson, you're going to second.
That's correct, Chairman. I'm pleased to second this report. Just a couple of comments, if I can. I always find, as a trained project manager, I'm always interested to see how risk is being addressed within any situation whatsoever. I've worked in organisations where the culture varies from seeking permission to asking for forgiveness, and it strikes me that as an organisation, we have to be a mix of those things. Where we're dealing with innovation, then we want to encourage, shall we say, a bit of risk-taking in order to push the boundaries, but certainly in many other areas, dealing with finance payments and the delivery of services, we want no level of risk at all. I'm perfectly content with the way in which the different risks, the likelihood and the impact are set out. I think that that's very interesting to read in the paragraph 17, table 1, what the impacts are and the way the costs that they're set across financial service and reputation. At county level, the staff retention is a key risk, one of the key things which is sat at the top along with cyber security. So I guess I've got a question that, is that treated just purely as an operational risk rather than a strategic risk within that? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We are in the fortunate position of being an employer that offers a good package, and I think Councillor Bennett referred in the previous item to being proud of some of the things that we're doing there. So staff retention for us at the moment is something we need to keep a watch on at an operational level, but it isn't a looming strategic risk for us.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. If we could go to the recommend. I have to say I used to run the UK Risk Committee at my company, and we had 103 strategic risks. So I'm delighted that we don't have that many. And my understanding is that sitting below the limited number of strategic risks, you also run an operational risk report which you can control on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, Chairman. So operational risks sit with the staff team from Catherine down, and actually we're in the process of preparing our operational risks for next financial year. So Rachel has independent experts coming in and working with all of the ADs, so it's on all of the different functions. And yes, there's a lot more than 3 at operational level.
And I think this is a far more sensible way of doing it than I had to do it in my company. So thank you. If we go to the recommendations, note the strategic risks, their score and mitigations, and then B, agree the risk policy at Appendix B. If we could just indicate on our buttons.
The others go grey when you're sorry.
And that's agreed 5-0. Nem Con. Next item on the agenda is the insurance contract procurement. Agenda item number 7. Councillor Eaves, Councillor Kenny, any comments? Thank you. We now go to Louise again to introduce this.
Yes, apologies, it's all me today. So this is a report that has an exempt appendix, which I'm sure Cabinet will take into consideration if we're going to stay in open, which obviously covers the financials and commercials. Our insurance procurement has historically been done as a group of authorities, and that can have really good benefits in terms of economies of scale. But for us, what we'd like to do is extend the current arrangements that we have for a year to investigate the market further to see what the right solution for us is, because if we have an improved risk profile to other authorities, we may be able to negotiate a better deal. The insurance market is quite interesting at the moment. It's impacted by inflation and cost of living, and in particular for property risks, the kind of supply and demand in the construction sector. So we want to make sure that we're going out for the long-term contract at the right time, and therefore, along with all of our neighbouring authorities who have similar end dates on their contracts, we are asking to extend for a year and then do a thorough procurement exercise to find the right deal for us. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. If Cabinet agree, as we had the exempt report circulated to us previously and have an opportunity to read it, I'm not proposing that we go into exempt session in agenda item 8, so that we could just move to debate at high level, if you wish, this item. I'm happy to propose it as is. Looking for a seconder.
Yes, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member have any comments? So the recommendations are to delegate authority to the Director of Resources and Organisational Development to extend the Council's current insurance arrangements for 12 months up to and including 31st March 2025. Delegate authority to the Director of Resources and Organisational Development to carry out a procurement exercise for the organisation's insurance arrangements, and delegate to the same director to award the new insurance contract to the preferred bidder or bidders following the evaluation of tenders to take effect from and including the 1st of April 2025 for a term of 5 years to ensure continuity of cover. And if we could vote on our... And that is approved. There are no further items, and so I can draw this Cabinet meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your kind attendance, both here and on any live stream. Thank you.
Thank you.
The live stream is ended. Thank you. Thank you.